Alright, hello. Welcome to the stream. Thanks SmokeB0 for following. You guys gotta tell me if the audio is too loud. I set up like follower alerts. If they are too loud, I can turn that down. Awesome. Okay. So, who have we got in chat? We've got. Oh, this is the how I fail at pronouncing names. All right, I'm gonna guess it's Toru. Got K45. You are 3K1. I'm gonna guess that's some kind of word. We got Kaizen Sky 7, CK Len 4AG2, MJ Yule, hey from Scotland, awesome. Back from where the same kind of like island where I grew up. Let's leave it there. Smash 8 Tap, hey. Who else we got? Yes, Love, NY, GR Thomps, GR Thomps. Okay, who else? RUTV1 and I think XYBD. I think that is that's everyone who's mentioned in chat. Anyway, that is good. Smoke Me 0, well done. Passing your OCP. That is fantastic. Glad the courses helped you. Okay. Mr. .G, thanks for the follow. Alright guys, let's kick this off. This is a workshop on template. They call it template injection. It's technically server-side template injection, because template injection can happen client-side as well with cross-site scripting. So I'm calling this server-side template injection. Let me paste the URL in the chat because I think some people mentioned on Twitter they wanted to follow along. So if you want to follow along, there is some setup, but if you've got Docker installed, it's a lot easier to set up. But effectively, we'll be going through this workshop. Very simple. There's a few different engines that are used, and like I said, very easy to set up. You basically just git clone the repo, and then some of them have build instructions, but most of the time you can just run Docker Compose. Okay, so let's move on. So let's just go over quickly who just followed. T086, thanks for the follow. All right, template injection, server-side template injection. What is it? Why? Basically, in modern web applications, how web applications used to work is you would, if you wanted to output HTML, you would just do it in like the control code. All right, so you would, in PHP, you would echo stuff out or print stuff, and that's fine, but it looks messy. It's difficult to maintain. Especially if you want to change the whole structure of a page. It can get kind of complicated. So template engines or templates were invented. And effectively what you do is you have a separate file that contains the raw HTML code of the site. And then you have, I'm not even sure the correct name for them, I guess like variable placeholders, and then when the application wants to output something, it would load the template file, and then it would switch out those placeholders with the actual values, which is useful. All right, so like in this case, right, this user ID placeholder. Okay, so the user ID is known to the application, it's not known to the template, but once the application loads the template, it's going to basically do a kind of search replace. It's a bit more complicated than that, but effectively it's just going to search for this and replace on the fly. So you can just do this. So in this case, you have a first name variable and a last name variable. That's a simple template, but as time went on, people wanted to do, or developers wanted to do more complicated things with templates. So they wanted to, you know, sometimes you might not have a string as the first name, all right, or it might not be stored as just a string. So you might have a user object, for instance, and in this case, you want the template to understand the concept of objects. You want to be able to just pass the user object to the template, and the template to understand, okay, yeah, so user.firstname is the user object, and it has this first name value, right? And then, again, they get more complicated because sometimes you don't want the control code to do all the iteration, you want the iteration to happen in a template. So if you have a list of users and you want to evaluate them and display all their usernames, their first name, last name, etc., it would be useful, instead of doing that in the control code, you just passed like an array of users or array of user objects to the code, to the template, and then the template would just iterate over them and display them. So templates can do a lot of things, but as we'll see, they are also pretty dangerous. Is that nuts has followed? Thank you. There's a lot of S's. All right, let's go next. Identify the template engine. Right, so there are tons of template engines. Almost like every single language has them. So, you know, here's a few. Obviously, there's more popular ones. Velocity and FreeMarker are very popular in Java. Twig, Smarty, I think Jinga 2, very popular as well. But one of the things that we need to do when we find server-side template injection is determine exactly what template engine we're dealing with. And it can be tricky. So James Kettle, who works at Portswigger, the guys who created Burp, he did some research into this. He came with this. This is like a basic version of a decision tree that you make. So these are all payloads, and effectively, if the payload works, you go down the green arrow, and they get more and more complicated. And eventually, you can find exactly which template engine you're dealing with. So we'll use some of this for sure. But let's kick off with the first lab, which is PHP. Okay, so what I have here, I have the code loaded. I'm in the PHP thing. I just need to cat the README. Build instructions. We just need to do Docker compose. All right, so Docker compose up. Okay. And I have, I'm going to proxy this browser via Burp. I have Burp Suite loaded here. What I've also done in project options, I have set, this is the host name used for all of these, but for obvious reasons, you want to redirect it to your local IP address because everything's running on Docker. So I've just done host name resolution there. Xvision355, thank you very much for the follow. So let's go back here. Am I running WSL2? I am, but this is just this is git bash. So I'm actually running bash natively on my Windows box. Okay, so I think it's loaded. Let's see. So the great thing about it is if you do load everything via Docker, all the URLs are in this workshop, so you can technically just do that. And you're here, right? So template injection, so template syntax basics. Twig syntax is pretty simple, so effectively all variables, if you want to have a variable, you have to open with 2 curly braces, then you have the variable name, and then you close. But you can also do fun things with variables. So if you pipe a variable via escape, what that should do is escape it for XSS. Effectively, XSS is pretty common in templates, because if you don't escape properly, obviously this is being reflected back in the application browser, so it's a lot of server-side template injections are missed, and everyone thinks they're just XSS. But that's why we have to do proper testing of these. So there is a twig variable self, and with the self variable, you can access quite a few functions, and that's effectively how you can get remote command execution. A lot of a repeated pattern you'll see with template injection is that they just, because you're accessing variables, the template engine actually has to have access to quite a lot of functionality, and so the problem is it has access to too much in terms of security. For developers it's great, but for attackers it's even better. So what we'll do, let's just enter an email. So we'll do test@example.com and submit that. Let me increase the font. Okay, so we submitted it and it reflected the email back there. All right, so we know at least we got some reflection. So what we can try and do, and what I'll do here, this is just a custom guide that I've written. These are all kind of neat little fuzzing payloads you can use. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go to burp, and we're going to find that request, which is here. We're going to send it to intruder. I don't care about that payload. And we'll paste the full list. And then what we'll do is we'll search for, let's do clear that, and we'll search for 49. You'll see why I'm searching for 49. If I start the attack. Okay, so if you've never used Burp Intruder, it's a really powerful fuzzing tool. And all I've done is I've gone through that list and it's replaced test@example.com with my payload, right? And it's URL encoded as well, which is great. You get the status, if there was an error, timeout, but more importantly, because I defined the search parameter, I said, okay, search for 49, we found a couple. Okay, and you'll see why 49, right? So what we've done here in this payload, we've put 7 multiplied by 7, right, which is 49. And obviously this one worked as well, this $sign. If we go down, the $sign didn't actually get evaluated. So $sign can also be an example of a variable, right? So that's why that's there. But that's interesting, right? So we managed to inject this template, this sort of variable into the template, and it was evaluated, which means we've got template injection. Another question is, what can we do with it? So let's go back, and we can verify. So we'll do 7 times 7 and submit, and we get thanks 49. So we know we can do that. So we can then, I guess, test this self variable and see whether we can actually access anything from the self variable, which we get a nice error, which is great. So let me just select that. So even if you didn't think this was Twig, it becomes pretty obvious from the error message, right? So we basically passed it the self variable, and it said, okay, it couldn't be converted to a string. All right, so that's basically what that error message is. The twig template is saying, okay, I've got this variable, I need to output it as a string in HTML, but I can't, so I'm going to basically generate an exception and throw it. And that's what we get here, which is useful, because now we know it's twig. We could have known it's twig by effectively, okay, the $7x7 didn't work technically because the $sign was still there. So then we go down this path. The 7x7 did work, so we go up this path. So the next thing to detect is 7 times and then the string 7, right? And if you do this, so 7 times the string 7, then in twig you still get 49. Okay, even though it's a string. I don't know why. But in Jinga, and this is what this note says, right? Returns 49 twig, but it returns 7 times the string 7, right? So the string 7 times in Jinga 2. So from this result, we know it's twig anyway, even if we didn't get that error message. So that's nice. So with this self variable, though, even though we can't access it and show the result because it's not a string, what we can do is we can still call functions via it. And it turns out the self object, I guess, you can access the env, which I guess is the environment. And that, in turn, has this register undefined filter callback function. So you can actually execute functions via this. And so we're just basically going to register this exec function. And then we're literally going to call it with an argument. Okay. So that's all these two do. You notice that these are actually two separate payloads, right? So this one just sets up the filter, and the filter is basically going to call exec. And this one says basically get filter, right? So we've set the filter to exec. It's going to call the exec function in PHP with ID. So let's paste that in. And we get command execution, right? So that's all that did. It basically set it up so that we could call the exec function in PHP, and then it passed the ID argument to the exec function. And the workshop exercise, though, goes beyond that. It's saying, okay, can you access the flag.txt on the server? I should point out, I don't know why, I think this document hasn't been updated, but a lot of the times it's not actually called flag.txt, it's called something else. And some of the usernames that you'll find are invalid, so just watch out for that. But let's try and access the file, right? So we have this payload where we can execute commands, so I don't know why my mouse isn't working. There we go. So let's just do an ls. Okay. So we get vendor. So I guess what we can try and do is do an ls, maybe ls-l /. Let's see. And so you'll notice what it's basically saying is the only file in the root directory, or the only directory in root directory, is var, which makes no sense, right? So what this is actually doing, interestingly, is what I believe it's doing is it's only looking at the last line returned, and basically outputting that. So var is usually the last directory in the root directory, so that's why that's getting returned. So if we want to actually figure out how what actual directories are, we can pipe this through base 64, I think. I believe actually we need to pipe it. I need to check the base 64 syntax, because I believe base 64 also has a limit. Give me 2 seconds. Alright, yeah, so I need to run base64 with -W's. Oh, that's not good. For some reason that is not working. Right, so I need to run it with -W0, which basically means it won't wrap. It'll put everything on one line. So if we do that now, we can copy this, and we will go back to burp, and we will go to Hackverter, and we'll paste it and decode that as base64. And there we go. We got the lovely list, okay? So we can see we have a bunch of common files and directories, but we have this secret directory, which is interesting. So let's run this again. I'm going to just do it all in burp because that is getting annoying. So I'm going to send the last request to repeater. So this is what we did. We basically did an ls-l / so there's a / %2f, and if I do secret to that, and we get this, we will copy that base64 encoded string and we'll paste it here. So like you saw, like I said, right, it's called flag.txt they're asking for, but actually the flag is flag_twig.txt, which I'm not entirely sure why. But what we can do now is we can say, okay, %2f flag_twig, and then we can just change this ls-l to a cat, and we'll send that. And then if we copy this and paste it in here again, we should get the flag returned. Yeah, okay. So we got it. Flag is this flag. Okay, so that's how you solve the first one. Where can I find that intruder payload list? I don't think I've published it, but it is on. Like really, this is my own like personal notes. And so I compiled this from various sources. There's the Portswigger guide, which has a bunch that you can go through. Not entirely sure. Like, it's a lot of this stuff, right? But there's also the Hack Tricks guide, which has a massive list of them, I think, somewhere. Like all of these things. So really, it's just a list I compiled. But they all kind of make sense. How long the lab's going to be up? This is a workshop you can just download. It's on GitHub, so you can try this lab anytime you want. And yeah, it's pretty simple to set up. The Java ones, you'll see you'll need to install a JDK. I think, and Maven. But I think for the most part, it's all good. Did anyone have any questions about that first one? Because if not, we can move on to the next, which is going to be Python. Again, they're all going to be kind of similar in terms of exactly how we're exploiting them. So if you have any questions about the PHP one, let me know in the chat, and I can always come back to it. Is Burp Community Edition good to use, or do you need the full pro version? For this, honestly, actually, the first time I did this walkthrough, which in preparation for this stream, I didn't even use Burp. The introduction says you need Burp or Zap, but you honestly don't. You can do it all via like the fields that it gives you. It's difficult, but it's so basic that Burp Community Edition should be fine. All you're using is really like, I used Intruder just to do that initial fuzzing, and then you can replay using Repeater. I think Hackverter isn't a pro extension, so if you even if you want to use that, you can. But honestly, you should just be able to use it Repeater. Okay, so let me do the Jenga 2 one. So we need to cancel this maybe I should just Control C it. Yep, okay. So the Jenga 2 is this one. Yep. I'm going to count the README again. Build instructions, just Docker Compose. All right, cool. So Docker Compose up. Okay, so I think that did it. I have compiled all these before, so that's probably why they're running so quick. All right. Let's open this one. Perfect. Okay. So, Jenga is a popular template engine in Python, similar to the Django template. Jenga can easily be used dynamically at runtime. Okay, so the syntax basics. So again, very similar to Twig, right? So you have variables inside curly braces. You can access attributes of objects using dot syntax. You can also use this syntax, which looks like suspiciously like, you know, accessing things from lists. So all those work. But, as we'll see, you can read metadata properties from any Python object. Method calls are not filtered. However, it's slightly more complicated than the Twig version. So, we can access a class from the meta properties __ class __. So in this case, what this is doing, we're defining a string, right? And then we're calling this class meta property, which basically, so we're creating an object of a string type object, right? And then we're saying, okay, which class is it? And it's returning, well, it's a string class. And that's a string. That's a class. I don't know if you call it a class object, but it's a representation of a class, right, in Python. And from any class, you can get the method resolution order object by using __ MRO __. And that contains the hierarchy of class for the current type. Okay, so effectively, strings are all base strings, right? Because if you understand object inheritance, objects can inherit other objects, right? In this case, a string isn't a base type, it's a type of base string, and a base string is a type object. Okay, so this is a list. So we returned a list, and then you can list all of the subclasses, right, of any of these. And of course, since object is basically the grandparent of all classes, right? Then you can enumerate all classes from this. So in this case, this is what this is doing. So again, just to go over it again, we're defining a string object. We're asking Python, what class is this string object? Which is saying, okay, it's a string. And then we're asking, what is the method resolution order of the string class, which is returning this lovely list. We're then saying, okay, get the second value out that list, which of course is the third value because 0, 1, and 2. So that's getting the object class. And then it's saying, okay, what are all the subclasses of the object class? So that's effectively what that's doing. So it's basically going to list like all of these, right? So a ton of them. And then you can pick any type from the previous list and call methods from those based on the index. All right. So in this case, the index 40 was the I'm not entirely sure, the file, right? It was file method. So we're calling file method with the argument the first argument /etc/password, the second argument R for read. And that's basically going to open this file. And then we're going to call, and because opening a file that returns a file object, we're going to just read from the file object. Okay? So, who just followed? Rubgun4, thanks for the follow. All right, let's try this live then. So again, we know it's Jenga, so we could do the intruder attack again. I think actually what they ask you to do in first you must detect which HTTP parameter is placed inside a template. Okay, so we'll do that. So let's just submit create, and we'll go to the proxy. And so we see these 4 parameters, and in the response you get this vcard object, I guess. So what we'll do is we'll go to intruder, and we will use all of those. Since we know it's Jenga, what we can probably do is just do a 7x7, and then iterate over all of those. And check the response. So actually we see here already in the name field we got a 49, in the organization field we got a 49, in the phone field we got a 49. So actually every single, I don't know why it asks us to do that, every single one of these reflects back somehow. So that's nice. But let's, I guess this one reflects back twice, which could be awkward. So let's do the organization, because that seems to only reflect in once. All right. So send this to repeater, and we'll just double check. Make sure we get a 49. We do. Perfect. Okay. So let's try and do some of this stuff. So let's just try this, right? I'm going to kill that intruder attack, and we paste that. Okay, so it worked. We got type string. Okay, so we defined a string, and we asked what's the class, and it says, well, it's type string. So we can do this now. So basically we're just adding .mro effectively. And so you see we get a list here. So it is, actually that might be a tuple. Okay, I think it's a tuple. All right, it's very similar to a list. If you know Python, you'll probably understand what a tuple is. That makes me suspect it's a tuple that's surrounded by parentheses. But either way, it acts the same kind of way as a list in terms of access, so that's fine. Okay, so let's grab the subclasses of the second type in this list, which is object. So this might be interesting, because this might be a lot of output. Let's have a look. Okay, yeah, so let's go to raw. So if I go down, if I scroll down, right, this is a lot of output. So you can see these are all the functions that we can call, right? And there's a lot of them. So I mean, if we search for the file one, I think we'll find it. Right, type file. And I'm not sure which index that is, but we'll just keep going. So probably index 40 according to this. So let's see if we can just read the /etc/password file. Oh, I need to put an extra one of those in, and we can. All right, so everyone understand how that works. This kind of thing, insanely common with template injection. I almost like to refer it as object stringing. You're basically using object orientation against itself. the fact that you can reference objects and functions from other objects means you can sort of chain them together. So in this case, that's all we're doing. We're basically chaining function calls and object calls together until we get what we want. In this case, it was basically using that functionality to find the file function. And even though we're not stating the file function, because we're able to return it from a list, or in this case a tuple, we can call it. And that's all we're doing. This is functionally equivalent, right, to just calling file. Okay, that is effectively at a basic level all we're doing here. We're calling the file function and we're passing it an argument, which is the file that we want, and we're saying we want to read that file, and then we're just calling .read, which obviously actually reads the file. So that's all we're doing. It's just a long-winded way of doing it, because we have to use templates. Justin D_0, thanks for following. Okay, so the exercise, though, is to access the file flag.txt. We can, I believe, do code execution. Bangash 110, thanks for following again. So I guess we can use this. So if we find the subprocess.popen function, which I believe should be at this one, 245, right? So let's try that. Since we know we can grab stuff. And so you notice actually this is a different way of doing it. So what they've done here is they've defined a list and they're evaluating that way. Okay. Yeah, we can find the subprocess.popen, which is great. That means we can open that. So the way we do that is effectively we need to execute this stuff. So let's just copy that there. So this bit lets us have access to the subprocess.popen function. And so then all we need to do is actually call it. So we're going to call ls-l. We're going to pass some parameters, and then we're going to call the communicate method. Whatever that returns, we're taking, I forget what communicate returns, but I think it's the output, clearly from a list. And then we're taking the first entry of that list, we're calling strip. And that's all that's going to return there. So let's send that. And you see it worked this time, right? So we get a list of all of the files and directories in the root directory. Okay, there's that secret directory again. So let's append that. And we see there's flag_Jinga again. It told us it was flag.txt. It's not. This is the person who wrote this didn't update. So I think we can just cat the flag there. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So that's obviously way more complicated than the PHP version. But hopefully it's understandable, right? All we're doing, if we can access objects, we can access metadata effectively about that object. And via that, we can do a chaining attack and actually grab or have access to functionality, proper functions, and pass them arguments. Does that make sense to everyone? I hope so. If not, obviously, you can grab this lab. It's free, and you can read all this great information. This was Python 2.7, I believe. Kaizen Sky 7. Can you explain the difference to detect engine between Twig and Jinga? As in the decision tree, it seems the same. Yes, I can. So, do you remember how in the Twig one, if we did... if we did 7 times 7 as a string, it would still return 49, right? In Jenga, it returns 7 sevens. Okay, and that's eventually just how Python works. Like in PHP doesn't understand that these are... If you give PHP a number 7, but you're multiplying, it thinks, oh, they must have meant interpret this as an integer. So that's why you get 49 in PHP. In Python, Python's like, okay, well, you have a string and you're multiplying it by 7. You clearly want to get 7 copies of that string as one string. So that's what that does. Obviously, Python's version makes way more sense. But luckily, that the fact that they're different means we can enumerate both. So that's good. Alternatively, we might have been able to do... No, okay. In the twig one, there was an error message as well. We could have worked that out. But yeah, so I think I mentioned that in the document down here. Yeah, because they do mention it, I think, on Portswigger when they're explaining this diagram, because obviously Jenga 2 and Twig are there, right? They come off the same branch. But I've basically noted it here, right? So if you are doing this one, you get 49 in Twig, but that in Jenga. Awesome. All right, let's move on to Tornado. So I need to stop that. Hopefully. There we go. All right. Tornado is 14. All right, we're going to cut the README. Docker Compose. Great, look at that one. Flying along with Docker Compose. Okay. All right. Let's open it. This one's pretty simple, I think. So Tornado template is part of a popular Python web framework. So this exercise will probably be the easiest. Yeah, look at it. It's tiny. Should demonstrate that simply reading the library documentation can sometimes reveal powerful functionalities. All right, so again, it's very much like Twig and Jenga syntax, just using 2 curly braces. Much easier to exploit than Jenga 2 because it supports the import directive. Great. So effectively, you can import anything, and you can do it like this. Notice that instead, if you're using variables, you need 2 curly braces. If you're doing import directives, you need 1 curly brace and I guess a percentage sign. So here's a complete payload which imports the OS module. Oh, fantastic. All right. So I guess we should see are both of these. Subscribe. Hello 49. I'm guessing. Okay, right. So it's in the name field here. So let's try just copying and pasting this and seeing. So, yep. Hello root. So that's easy. So I don't know if Tornado had. I wonder if we use this trick. Use this list. See if we can figure out if Tornado is detectable in this way. So I'm going to do test. We're going to go to the proxy. Send this to intruder. Don't care about the email position, but we do care about this. And I will. You know what? I won't match anything. Actually. I'll flag all these and also 49. Oh. Okay. Start attack. Okay, so we get error messages here. Yeah. To be honest with you, I'm not sure how to... I'll have to do some research, I guess, on whether there is a nice, easy way to see if Tornado can be detected. I do wonder whether we can do it using that weird syntax. So sometimes if you import like something that doesn't exist, maybe that'll give an error. Well, I guess it did. So I guess that might be a way. if import OS works, but import like mash keyboard doesn't, that might be a way of evaluating whether this is Tornado or not. What about __ import? What you mean? You mean doing that? Or setting this? Yeah, Sayon, if you give me a full payload to try, I can always try that. But in the meantime, access the flag. Okay, so we have this lovely payload that works. That means we can access basically anything. So we can execute commands. So let's execute. Oh, geez, why is it doing that? There we go. Let's execute ls-l / again. And we get a lovely list. There is the secret directory there. What I'm going to do is use repeater. So / secret. And we get flag _ torn. So if we put that in there, and then cat. Yeah, there we go. We got a flag. So very simple to get the flag there. Sayon, if you we can always come back if you come up with the full payload to use. But let's keep this ball rolling. Let's go to Java now and Velocity, which is, I think Velocity and FreeMarker are basically the two most popular Java template engines. So yeah. Okay, right, that makes sense. So. All right, Velocity. Cat the README. So in this case, you need to run. Well, you need Java 8. Actually, you need the SDK for Java 8 because Gradle uses the SDK. I think I've already built this, so I'm not going to run that Gradle W command. But we'll run docker compose up. And it should work. So let's open it. Cool. These are slightly different. So in this case, you get access to the templates themselves. Effectively, you'll be able to edit the templates yourselves. And you might think that's maybe a little odd, but who just followed? OXKR34M. Thanks for the follow. Slate 2400 followed 4 minutes ago, and I don't think I heard the notification. Thank you very much. But if you think about it, if you've ever used WordPress, you can edit like templates in WordPress. Technically, you're editing raw PHP, which is even worse, right? But there are functions, there are times when you would want to edit templates directly. So to access administrative features, use credentials admin and 123456. Do not use that. I don't know what I get. Like I said, this hasn't been updated. It's admin and I think Hackfest is the password. But imagine you had a blog and you wanted people to edit the template of the blog, but you didn't want them to edit the raw code, like in WordPress, right? So that might be why you're doing it. Other applications I've seen that use this whenever you have, and I think in this case, this is a very good example, email campaigns, right? If you have a web app which allows you to send emails out, a lot of the time, you'll be able to embed things in the email, like custom parameters that you can set. So this is probably hugely popular with some of those mailing list applications. And in this case, it's kind of like one of these. So we have this template, which is basically going to be parsed by the template engine. And it's going to replace custom name with the customer name. But in this case, because it's running a vulnerable template engine as well, we can inject some nasty code. So it says the original payload found by James Kettle required the activation of an optional plugin. But in the workshop, the plugin will not be enabled. So that's nice. Velocity has variable assignment, right? So it's set foo equals bar foo. So we can show that in action. So what I'll do actually is I'm just going to delete all of that. And we're just going to we're going to call the set directive, and we're going to set the variable foo equal to bar, and then we're going to call foo. And you don't even have to save these. You can just do test. And we see it outputs bar, right? Okay. So that's all we're doing there. We can set stuff. That's nice. This pattern is used to access interesting types. Here is a payload that allows the execution of a command without any optional plugin. Okay, so again, this is very similar to what we were doing before. All right, we're effectively object chaining. So we're creating a variable x and we're setting it to empty string. All right, and because Java is object oriented, you can, from any object, basically anything is an object in Java, and from any object you can pretty much get to the object the object class, I mean. But in this case, you don't even need to do that, because what you can do is you can call this object, which is a string. You can call .class, which is just going to return the class string, right? But the class object has a method forName, which basically means if you give it the name of any class, it's going to return an instance of that class. So let's see how this works. Let's, instead of doing all that, let's see if we can just see what RT returns. So again, we're setting x equal to an empty string, and then we're going to say, okay, we're going to set the RT variable equal to the class of that string. And I don't think, okay, we do need 2 hash marks. Okay, let's press test. Right, okay, so we got class is java.lang.string. Right? This is actually an object. So we can call methods of this object, right? The only reason it's displaying as this is because when you display it, it's converting the object to a string representation. So if we call forName and pass it this string java.lang.runtime, and then we're going to output, yep, okay, we're going to output RT again, we get a class java.lang.runtime. Okay, so now we have access to the runtime class. Okay, and that's why we had the RT object. And we're going to do this 2 more times. We're going to basically create variables. One variable is going to be the character class, and one variable is going to be the string class. And so we'll do this. Hopefully this makes sense, by the way. Object chaining is really fun. So then what we're going to do is we're going to create a new variable ex, and we're going to use the instance we have of the runtime object to call get runtime, and then get runtime will basically create an instance of the runtime object, which allows us to execute commands using exec. Okay, and then all we need to do, because we have this variable defined as this exec function executes, we can call wait for, and then we can get the output of that of the command execution output, and then we can just iterate over it. So that's literally all that's doing. So this thing basically executes the command, or at least sets up the conditions where we can actually execute it. This section just calls the wait for, which obviously wait for basically executes and then returns when the command finishes. And then we're gonna create a variable called out, which is just going to get the input stream from whatever we just executed. In this case, the input stream is the output, if that makes sense. So it's the output of the command, right? It's whatever the command returned to the system. And then we're just going to iterate over all of these. So this is why we needed the character and the string objects. This, I guess, we can't technically iterate easily, but we can if we have access to those objects. So that's all that's going to do. It's basically going to read every single byte from the output. It's going to convert it to a string. It's going to convert it to characters and then convert those to strings. And so if we test that, we do get, I believe 0 is going to be the return code of the command. We can actually test that because if we do that, I believe that's going to return, well, that's going to return an error. Hang on. I wonder if we can, yeah, that is weird. I wonder if we just do, it may be that, yeah, okay. No such file directory at test. Okay, right, so I mean, I guess technically that is the return code, but obviously if the return code is not 0, it's going to cause an exception anyway. So let's see what we can do. Can we grab, can we have access to the flag.txt? So if we run this, there's a secret directory again. So let's paste that in, see what's in secret. This time it's actually called flag.txt. Look at that. Okay, so flag.txt, and we'll change this to a cat, and we'll test it. And we got it, all right? So conceptually, this is exactly the same thing that we did with Python. It just required a bit more setup. But realistically, in Java, you can access classes and functions way more easily than in Python. In Python, we had to do all that, you know, ridiculous with the stuff with the MRO. But in Java, you can just, if you have an instance of an object, you can always access its class. And if you can access its class, you can access forName, the function which basically allows us to look up other classes. So if there are any questions about that, let me know. But otherwise, we'll move on to FreeMarker. So cancel this. So there's two FreeMarker labs. One is sandboxed and one isn't. So we'll use the one that isn't sandboxed. This one requires Maven. Again, I believe I already created it yesterday. So this should be fine. Let's go to that one. Okay. Administrative features, credentials, admin, and Hackfest again, so we can use that. Okay. All right. So FreeMarker, another popular Java template engine. In this case, the template is different, right? In the previous ones, the template used 2 curly braces. In Velocity, obviously, it used a different syntax. In this one, we're using $sign and 1 curly brace. And I believe, if we go back to this diagram, no, it's not even listed. Interesting. There should be a way of determining it. I believe... Right. this is how you determine this one. You can use a sign, which is in my list, I believe. Yeah. So in this case, if you're using this fuzzing, I tell you what, we'll do it. Why not? Edit the welcome page and paste all these, and I guess click test and see what happens. Okay, so I think that's just the first one. So if we take out the first one is designed to trip up parsers. It's got all this incomplete syntax. That's probably what happened. If we test this, oh no, okay. I'm guessing if we tested these one by one, we could find out. So if we do that, we get error in the syntax. If we do this, we shouldn't get error. Yeah, we should get 49 there, right? So if we go all the way down and we get to this assign one, this should return 49. And it does, right? And so that's because in what's this? Is this velocity? FreeMarker, sorry. In FreeMarker, you have this assign directive, and all we're doing effectively is assigning this variable equal to 7 times 7, and then displaying it. So if this works, if this displays 49, you know you're using FreeMarker. Okay. So, FreeMarker has a specific list of built-in functions, often called built-in in the FreeMarker documentation. These built-in functions can be suffixes to variables. For example, if you have a variable NB average users, you can take the absolute value of that using $abs. Okay, so this can be shown pretty easily. I think if you do hello world lowercase, I think. I believe that works. Nope. Is it 2 lowercase? Oh, I think it's... right. Okay. So you see what we did there? We had hello world with a capital H and a capital W. And this is a string. I mean, this could have been a variable, right? If we'd set a variable to hello world. And then we just called the function lowercase, and it output hello world all lowercase. Okay. So that's how they work. It says most built-ins are really primitive and uninteresting from a security standpoint. And that's true. I mean, most of these make sense, right? You know, if in a template, you sometimes want to uppercase stuff. You sometimes want to, I don't know, trim things. So that makes sense. There's one standout new. We can read the following notice in the official documentation. This built-in can be a security concern because the template author can create arbitrary Java objects and then use them. Also, the template author can trigger static initialization for classes that don't even implement template model. Great. So this is bad. Following the guidelines described, we can invoke the exec function. By design, the execute class allows us to execute commands and get the result. So in this case, what we're doing is we're using a sign to create a variable ex. We're setting ex as this class, freemarker.template.utility.execute. Okay, which again is a class that just executes commands on the system. We're calling new, right? And what new does is it creates an object based off that class. So we're going to get an execute object. And then all we're going to do in the template, again, we're going to call the object and pass it the function, and pass it ID as the parameter. Okay. And that's going to execute ID and return us the value. So way simpler than the last one. If we test that, literally all you need to do to get command execution in this template. Okay, so can you access the file flag? Okay, yes we can. Let's do ls-l/. It's going to be in secret again, isn't it? Ooh, there's a lot of stuff. Where's secret? There it is. All right. Secret is it going to be called flag.txt? It is. Okay, so we're going to cat secret flag.txt and test, and we got it. Okay. It's worth mentioning FreeMarker does provide a way to restrict the classes referenced in templates. The next exercise will implement a class resolver. Okay. So that's interesting. You can still bypass that, as you'll see. And this is actually a pretty common way of preventing this kind of stuff with template engines. A lot of the time, it's an absolute failure, though. So, generally speaking, template engines just have this functionality, and there's not much you can do about it. So we will use FreeMarker with the template class resolver, right? Enabled. Let's cancel that. Okay, and CD26. And I think we just need to, yeah, so if you're doing this yourself, you need to run mvn clean install, but I've already done that, so I just need to do docker compose up. And we get this. Let's log in as admin, Hackfest. Okay. So let's try running the previous code, right? And seeing what happens. Because I'm betting it's gonna complain. Yep. Template blocked. Instantiating freemarker.template.utility.execute is not allowed in this template for security reasons. Perfect. So right, a subclass of the class template class resolver needs to be implemented. This class will decide if the class reference in the template is allowed or not. Okay. So just copy that and print. All right, so this is all the... All right, that's the data models. Okay, finding a reference to a class loader. Instances of the class loader have the potential to give us remote command execution or remote code execution. For instance, class loaders could be provided method load classes from external sources. Here is a common place where a class loader might be returned. So kind of this is like kind of weird. So if you think about it, in these cases where you have this sandbox feature, you cannot call dangerous functions, dangerous objects, or you can't create instances of objects directly. So you couldn't just say, okay, I want the execute object. All right, it's going to get blocked. However, if you can get to the execute object via object chaining, that tends to be allowed. And you'll see this if we go down here and read, if we want to read files, directories, you're not going to be able to just call the like a file input reader, or even a URI. Not even going to be creating an instance of that. What you need to do, though, you can call the class loader, which has get resource as a function or a method, and from that return object you can call toURI, which gets you an instance of a URI object. Once you have an instance of a URI object, you can call resolve on and pass it basically this file syntax to get /etc/password, which obviously I think returns the file object. You can then call toURL, and then you can grab the bytes of that file by just calling this. I hope that makes sense. I found this once on a pen test. It wasn't actually template injection. It was something different. they were letting me execute raw like create plugins and upload them and execute the plugin, but they had a whitelist of functions that could be used, but they were only checking whether you directly called a function on the whitelist. And so by doing object chaining in this way, I was able to use a whitelisted function to get an object that wasn't whitelisted, and then I could call functions off that, and ultimately use that to get command execution. So let's paste this in. So if we test this, template blocked. Okay, so why is that template blocked? Oh, the class loader's blocked. Okay. So I think this... I'm not entirely sure this should work. Or maybe if we do bytes 0. Okay. I'm not entirely sure why that's not working. Alright. Either way, I think maybe that's... I'm not entirely sure why that's not working then. It could be something to do with the class loader. There is this method, though, we can use. So, again, this is the same concept, chaining objects together. And it works on FreeMarker 2.3.29 and lower, so it was fixed this year. But you need to find a variable in the data model that is an object. So this template brute force all the objects in the data model. So if we copy this, oops. So all this is doing, it's getting access to the data model. All right, it's iterating over it, and it's basically going to attempt to load the class loader for the object. If it can, it means that the whatever that was in the data model is an object. Okay, that's pretty much all it's doing. It's just checking whether any of the things in the data model are objects. So if we test this, we see that the message in the message variable in the data objects isn't an object, slogan isn't, username isn't, but REQ is. Okay, and it was able to execute commands, right, using this. So again, we're if I show this, the object test here was the REQ object. It called class, it called protection domain, it called class loader to get the class loader. It then used class loader to load the class. Right, from that class, it loaded get field. Default wrapper, it called .get, and from that it was able to load the execute function. So again, it's ridiculously complicated, but it works, and it's only because objects are so sort of interrelated in Java. You can get almost from any objects, you can get to any other object in Java if you know what to call. So it says, I guess we're supposed to be able to get the flag again. So if we use, I think if we use just request, right? And just give me a sec. I think if we do that, yep, okay. So in that case, we just replaced what was it? Object underscore test, which came from our for loop, with the actual object that we were testing. So in this case, it was REQ. And so now we can just call any function, any command we want. So we'll do ls -L, and we'll get a list, and I'm guessing there's going to be the secret directory again. So we'll do secret, and we have the flag.txt. Okay, and we got the flag. Okay, so that one's obviously slightly more complicated. So it's just using basically a sandbox escape, but it uses the same concepts we were using before in the Python stuff as well. So object chaining, obviously, very powerful, and extremely hard to defend against, unfortunately. But anyway, that's the conclusion. So there are definitely, I would definitely encourage you to go and try these labs and just play around with them. There are also on Portswigger, there's at the Portswigger Academy, there's a bunch of labs as well. So I definitely recommend trying those out. And I think, yeah, Hacktricks is great. If you've never seen Hacktricks before, it's amazing. It's just a massive cheat sheet that goes down all of these different methods. But yeah, definitely encourage you to read up on it. It's definitely fun if you find it on a real test, and usually pretty easy to get command execution. But even if you can't get command execution, you can usually read files, which is, still good. So that's pretty much all I had. But if there are any questions, I don't think I missed any questions. I'm just reading up the chat. Yeah, I don't think so. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask now. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a really good New Year. It's the last stream of the year. I'm going to try and stream potentially this weekend, but definitely next week a lot. I pretty much have next week off. So I'm going to try and stream. So if you do want to see a stream next week, and you have ideas for what you want to see, let me know. Either send me a tweet at me or post it in chat now, and we can see what we can do. But I figure at a very if a very unplanned level, we can do some try hack me boxes. We can do some Portswigger Web Academy. But otherwise, happy to try and set up stuff if people have ideas or people want to see things. Awesome. All right. I don't think there are any more questions, so I will put that up on the screen. Thanks very much for watching. As always, if you can give me a follow on Twitter and Twitch and my YouTube, that'd be great. I'll probably do some minor editing to this video and upload it to YouTube at some point next week. But yeah. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Have a great new year. Hopefully 2021 will be much better than 2020.